Welcome to Midnight Casebook, where every shadow hides a secret and every mystery begs to be solved. Tonight, we unravel the chilling tale of Father Brown and the Scarecrow with the missing glove, a fan-made story paying homage to the brilliance of G.K. Chesterton's legendary detective. We'd love to have you along for this enigmatic journey. Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Share your theories, and if you spot any inconsistencies, don't hesitate to call them out. Your keen eyes and sharp minds help us craft even more captivating mysteries in the future. Chapter 1. The Glove Beneath the Scarecrow. A single muffled shot shattered the tranquility of St. Athelstan, echoing across the damp moors, racing through the autumnal gusts like a hunted spirit, while the distant crows took off in a frantic flutter as if foreseeing disaster. The heavy rain began to fall, stinging the cheeks of a solitary figure rushing down the path toward the stately manor, loomed like an old spectre against the treacherous sky. Father Brown, stout and unassuming, felt the gathering storm, a violent tempest which seemed intent on swallowing more than just the sun. The air was laden with the smells of wet earth and impending doom. He was too late for the peaceful village he knew so well. As he reached the grand doors of Burnham Hall, they swung open, revealing a scene rife with chaotic fervor. The manor's interior was dimly lit by the flickering of candles, casting long shadows that danced across the walls like phantoms. A frenzied clamor erupted from the lips of the household, punctuated by the discordant chirping of a telephone, which cut through the hushed whispers of terror. A maid, Maria, her face ashen and smeared with streaks of mascara, flung herself toward him, her breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. "Oh, Father Brown," she cried, her voice splintering the thick tension that gripped the room. "It's Mr. Calthorpe. He's dead. I heard the shot from the kitchen. I couldn't have done it." Her eyes widened with fright, rimmed with sadness, as her words seemed to pour from her like a horror-stricken river. Father Brown, fascinated by the young woman's raw emotion, allowed her to rattle on. Mr. Calthorpe was found in his study, draped across his desk as if in sleep. But it wasn't sleep, oh no. And then there's the glove. Just a glove, pristine, clean as a silver spoon. "Father, I swear I didn't even touch him." "Where is this glove?" he asked, squeezing her thin shoulders gently as the storm hammered against the windows, filling the air with a palpable chill. "And what do you mean by just a glove?" A scarecrow. In the field. By the Scarecrow," Maria stammered, her fingers trembling, before she pointed outside, as if she were a child revealing a hidden treasure. "It was left there, right beside him. But there's something else, Father. One of the villagers, a farmer, I think, saw someone leave the manor right before the shot." Before Father Brown could respond, the door burst open, revealing Inspector Granger, a stout man draped in an ill-fitting overcoat whose face was reddened by rain and exertion. "Father, it's as she says. We found the body in the study, and this glove—" He fumbled a small wrapped parcel from his coat, revealing a pristine white glove that glistened even in the gloom. No blood, no sign of struggle. It's baffling. The glove, it doesn't match any pair I've seen in this house. And there seems to be something hidden about it, not just innocent cotton. Father Brown's gaze drifted to the signature chair by the fire, its embroidered fabric flickering in the candlelight as if whispering secrets of the night. "Mr. Calthorpe had many enemies, I am sure. But tell me, Inspector, what do the villagers say?" "Rumors, mostly. the inspector replied, his eyes narrowing. They talk of Mr. Calthorpe's recent dealings with farm properties, attempting to force out families for land acquisition. With each word, the tension inside the room seemed to knit tighter, each character drawing inward like the threads of a spider's web. As they spoke, Father Brown's mind whirred with connective threads. An innocent maid, a powerful landlord, a single glove. Tell me, Maria, did Mr. Calthorpe have any particular habit of losing things? Father Brown asked, feeling a sharp turn of instinct within himself. Why, yes. He would often claim to misplace his gloves. He had a peculiar collection, you see. But none so pristine as this, she replied, her brow visibly furrowing in thought as she lowered her voice. But, oh, the night of the annual fair last week. He had some accusations thrown at him of criminal dealings. There were whispers of some very influential people involved. I thought surely it was all gossip until now. But where does this glove fit into it all? Father Brown's voice gained fervor as he became more intrigued by the conundrum. He glanced back at the inspector, whose brow now wore an expression of dawning realization. Suddenly, Maria jolted, her eyes wide with dread as she pressed against the wall, her fingers curling up into the patterned wallpaper. Father, I saw someone very strange. He was hiding behind the Scarecrow when I went to gather laundry just this morning. The chilling wind howled through the crack in the window, casting eerie reflections that flickered across Father Brown's face. What did this person look like? He asked urgently, sensing the threads of the mystery unraveling into revealed truths. I don't know. A shadow. A coat like a crow. I couldn't see their face, but there was something in the way they moved. Like they knew something. Something about Mr. Calthorpe. Before the inspector could probe further, the house's wooden stair creaked ominously, cutting across the atmosphere like a knife. The front door slammed with a terrifying finality, echoing through the manor's forgotten halls, sending a fresh wave of fear into the room. Father Brown felt the air thicken with anticipation, as if the very walls held their breath in horror. His thoughts raced like the oncoming storm, piecing together a puzzle that seemed more sinister and serpentine than an ordinary murder. Just then, a wild shriek pierced the stillness, enough to rattle even the stoutest of nerves. "Father! The Scarecrow!" Maria gasped, her voice clawing at silence. "There's something on it. You must see." In the sudden rush that followed, the flood of urgency drenched Father Brown, propelling him towards the mystery outside. The looming silhouette of the Scarecrow throbbed against the indigo sky, an ominous sentinel revealing a truth that may shatter more than simply the quietude of St. Athelstan. With every step, he felt a current gather behind him, and the certainty of a secret deeper than mere murder permeated the air. Just as he approached the threshold of the door, behind him was the sound of glass shattering on the floor. Something was very wrong, and he had awoken a crumbling castle of shadows that threatened to consume them all before dawn's light broke, unveiling the truth he desperately sought. Chapter 2. The Locked Room. The sound of breaking glass, sharp and sudden, resonated through the dimly lit corridors of Burnham Hall like a death knell, shattering the thick tension that had settled in the aftermath of tragedy. Father Brown felt the creeping chill of dread snake up his spine as he turned back toward the study where Mr. Calthorpe lay dead. Shadows danced ominously on the wall, cast by flickering candlelight, each one a spectre of secrets and despair. The inspector stood, frozen, his face contorted in shock, the now empty hand that had held the package quivering in the quiet despair. "Maria!" Father Brown shouted, rushing into the room, the weight of the moment pressing heavy upon him. The flickering flames reflected off the polished surfaces, illuminating the chaos like disembodied eyes surveying the aftermath of a storm. The study's door was locked, like a keeper of mysteries too deep to unearth easily. The chill was palpable, filling the air with an electric tension that seemed to whisper of ghosts long past. "There's something wrong," the inspector muttered, glancing around the room that had become a coffin of secrets. Deadlocked from inside, no sign of forced entry. As Father Brown knelt beside the desk, an elegant piece that signified wealth and power, his gaze fell upon a fragment of a torn letter lying serenely on the floor, its ink faintly glimmering with the residue of urgency. "This," he murmured, reaching for the letter with a deliberate slowness, as if expecting a serpent to strike. He could feel the weight of its significance even before he touched the paper. As he unfolded the fragile sheet, the words leaped out in a tight scrawl, invoking a chorus of suspicion. "Must meet, or the consequences shall be grave." "What does it say, Father?" Maria pressed, her eyes wide and anxious as she hovered close, the scent of rain-soaked fabric clinging to her. "Only pieces of a greater puzzle," he replied gently, knowing the burden it carried for them all. "But who wrote it, and to whom? The consequences could be the death of Mr. Calthorpe himself." Inspector Granger stepped closer, squinting at the elaborate scrawl. "A business matter, perhaps? Something with friends or enemies?" "Or enemies posing as friends," Father Brown replied, standing up and scanning the room. "But we must not overlook the physical aspects." His fingertips brushed the leather-bound volumes lining the bookshelves, a fine collection. But there seemed an oddity that tugged at him. The study felt too sterile, the polished mahogany too perfect, like a stage crafted for too grand an act. "Let's get you all out of here for now," the inspector commanded, ushering Maria toward the door. "We can't—" "Wait," Father Brown interrupted, suddenly struck by the scuff marks on the floor near the study door, a subtle distortion in a carpet that gleamed as if untouched by dust. He knelt again, pressing his fingers against the fabric. "These marks, they seem to indicate movement, but look, there are no prints along the edges. Someone could have concealed their exit in haste." His eyes narrowed, a revelation unfolding in the back of his mind. "Did you hear anything, Maria? A noise telling of struggle?" She hesitated, glancing between them nervously. "No, but I was in the kitchen. I heard voices, low and muffled. Then the shot came, piercing the quiet. Voices before the gunshot." Father Brown's brow furrowed deeper. Someone could have had company. Someone unexpected. The inspector scoffed as he swept his eyes around the room, capturing every detail that could lead to clarity. "But there's no one here. Everyone in the house had an alibi. Even the maid herself was accounted for, blind to the horrors lurking right beside her." Suddenly, a blur flickered past the window, shadows weaving through the storm-battered glass. Father Brown turned sharply, the shock momentarily washing over him as a gust of wind spiraled violently, battering against the panes. "Is it just me, or did that shadow seem human?" "What are you suggesting?" the inspector snapped, frustration etched across his features. Someone could be among us," Father Brown mused, his voice quiet as he leaned into the moment's profound gravity. "The Scarecrow may hold a darker secret than a lonely glove." Sweeping through the study, he plucked the unnoted canvases lining the wall, revealing the faded contours of a thoroughfare leading back into obscurity, dust gathering in the corners but still sharp enough to catch a wandering eye. If this room was truly locked, how did that guilty party escape? As if summoned by the rising tension, a sudden crash echoed from the hall outside, pulling them from their conspiratorial reverie. Father Brown turned instinctively, but it was Maria's sharp intake of breath that drew his attention as she pointed with terror at a distant shadow. "What now?" Granger muttered, eyeing the door in apprehension. The shadows deepened, swirling like ghosts around the threshold, and a cacophony of footsteps thundered like a racing heart. "Stay back," Maria cried, barely able to contain herself, as the door swung ajar, revealing a figure clad in dark clothing, half illuminated and half swallowed by the deepening shadows. "It can't be." Who is it?" the inspector demanded, raising a hand toward the lurking presence. Then, in one swift motion, the figure darted back, vanishing into the darkened passage beyond. The room, leaving an aura of palpable despair that clung like fog. Father Brown stepped forward, resolve hardening in his chest. "Quick! This way! We must follow!" But as they rushed past the threshold, the study door slammed shut behind them, locking with a dreadful finality that echoed a warning, sealing the mysteries contained within, even as Father Brown's heart pounded with an urgency that promised revelation. The locked room held more than just a body. It held the essence of an unresolved tension that now festered amid the shadowy corridors of Burnham Hall. And time was already running out. Chapter 3. An Heirloom of Deceit. A scream shattered the heavy silence of Burnham Hall, soaring into the tempest outside like a captive bird desperate for freedom. Father Brown felt a jolt of shock pulse through him as Maria collapsed to the ground, her hands clutched around a piece of paper stained with ink and fear. The flickering candlelight cast erratic shadows that seemed to dart away, as if even the spirits of the hall were wary of the unfolding chaos. A rumbling thunder echoed overhead, shaking the very foundation of secrets buried deep within the manor, and with it came a sudden realization that the tempest mirrored the turmoil of hearts and minds lurking within the walls. "Maria," Father Brown knelt beside her, feeling the damp chill of an approaching storm seeping through the cracks of the house. "What is wrong?" "Father, I found this." Her voice trembled as she handed him the paper, her eyes wide with terror. The letter's edges were smeared, and pools of a dark stain marred the ink. It was nearly unrecognizable. As he studied it, the clarity of the words pierced through the din of nature's wrath. "The true inheritance lies beneath the willow. Do not trust those who smile." "The willow," he murmured, piecing together fragments of muttered legends and family lore. He glanced toward the window, where the branches of the old tree whipped wildly against the impending storm, as if beckoning. Could it bear witness to hidden truths? "Father, we have to leave." Maria's gaze flitted nervously to the locked door, as if expecting it to burst open with some lurking menace. "No, not yet," he replied, the weight of impending revelations pulling him closer to the heart of the mystery. A will, perhaps, but why not make it known openly? Why concealed beneath the very roots of strife? The inspector shifted awkwardly, his brow furrowed in thought, eyes darting back to the door. "That's no matter, Father. This manor is like a crumbling tomb. The family may dissolve into chaos when the true heir is revealed." "Or chaos when the heir suspected," Father Brown countered, locking eyes with the inspector, clenching the letter in clarity, seeing not just the ink, but the narrative blossoming between the lines. With the storm outside swelling to a frenzy, the surrounding shadows crept in with sinister presumption, tightening their grasp as Maria spoke again, her voice low but charged. What if the will's existence was known only to the murderer? Motive and opportunity, Father Brown mused aloud, the cogs of his reasoning clicking into place. Who among them might have a reason to hold on to such power? Whispers of resentment echoing through the hall, the weight of familial duties angry beneath even polished outside smiles. As if summoned by the creeping unease, the clock on the wall chimed ominously, each toll resonating with sinister finality. Father Brown instinctively calculated their approach, measured the shadows against time. Let us not forget the true players, Inspector. Mr. Calthorpe's widow, Eleanor, harbored more bitterness than affection, or so I sensed at their last meeting. Bitterness? The phrase sparked a gleam of interest in the inspector's eyes. She spoke of inheritance and time wasted, an urgent resentment, conflicted feelings towards her late husband. They could have sparked a deadly confrontation, Father Brown speculated. Or was she merely an unwitting victim? The inspector suggested, his voice dropping low, tinted with doubt, but edged with a decision built upon the swell of brimming danger. Victim or participant, Father Brown replied, standing as the wind shrieked at the window like a warning. It is not simply murder we seek to unravel here, but the very foundation of avarice that could warp one's sense. Greed taints even the purest of motives. Suddenly, another crash rang through the manor, reverberating through the thick air. Father Brown's heart quickened. Just beyond the study door, something stirred. They exchanged looks, instinctual dread blossoming in their shared silence. Stay close, the inspector breathed, taking cautious steps toward the source of disturbance just beside the door. Father Brown's thoughts spiraled as he approached the window, casting a wary glance outside into the storm. The willow loomed ominously in the distance, its form twisting beneath the gale. He suddenly recalled the glances exchanged between the widow and her son, those furtive expressions, speaking volumes amid polite words. Resentment lurked, as though it too might reveal its deadly bite. Yet, as the trembling wind propelled the latch on the heavy door, it swung open with a reluctant groan, and before them stood Eleanor Calthorpe, her face pale and shadowed by otherworldly light, as she stumbled inward, breathless. Father Brown, you must help me. There are whispers and half-truths I cannot. Eleanor, the inspector raised an eyebrow, perplexed by her sudden intrusion. What brings you here? We were trying to save me, she interrupted, her gaze darting downward as if she wished to flee from her own words. You don't understand. The will, it cannot be found. The will, Father Brown repeated, feeling the ominous grasp of the pieces closing back on themselves. And what of your son, Alfred? How does he fit into this equation? Alfred believes he is to inherit in full. Eleanor's voice rose, desperation intertwining with the notes of the storm, the sound of dripping rain swirling around them like chaos, eviscerating the boundaries of the manor. But if the will is concealed, and if it's lost, God save us, for we shall all be doomed to live in this damned house of lies. Lies? Father Brown pressed, his mind racing to connect the threads of sentiment that tugged at the strings of fate. Or inheritances left to navigate the currents of resentment, when blood ties become nothing but shadows above the willows. Before Eleanor could respond, a sudden silence descended, thick and tangible, the kind that led hearts to air against reason. As if drawn by some hidden hand, the lights shimmered, flickering momentarily before plunging everything into darkness. The wind howled with a fierce abandon as the air turned electric. Then, with a resounding crack, another flash seized the sky, and Father Brown's heart caught in his throat. A figure rushed past the window, a dark silhouette, darting towards the willow through wind-swept rain. "After them!" he shouted, heart racing, but when he turned to call to his companions, they were gone, swallowed into the shadows that wrapped hungrily around the room. "Father Brown," came Maria's voice. Was it panic or a warning? "Where are you?" he called back, eyes straining against shadowed corners. The rain lashed against the windows, drowning out the sound of footsteps and leaving only the pounding of his heart clinging to surrounding silence. In that chaos, a light flickered on the floor, a glint of something metal, almost forgotten. Father Brown knelt down, fingers brushing against a silver locket trapped beneath the writing desk, its chain broken, reflection throbbing with ominous probability. And deep within, the truth hid in layers just shy of light, waiting for the right moment to pierce the heart with its revelation. The door sighed shut behind him, locked, sealing his fate amid growing darkness, murmurs breeding tension as he faced the truth of the matter. Time was running out, and, with it, the secrets of burnished heirlooms of deceit began to surface from despair's relentless grasp, echoing the very call to salvation he was bound to uncover. Chapter 4. Whispers in the Wind. The thunder clapped overhead like divine judgment as Father Brown stumbled out of Burnham Hall, the trailing shadows of fear and intrigue still clinging to him like shrouds. Rain lashed against his clerical collar as he dashed toward the village, each drop a stinging reminder of the urgency that was swelling within him. He needed clarity, a sense of direction, and the way to breath among the oppressive gloom that the manor had wrapped around him. The gossipy warmth of the Hare and Hound Tavern beckoned, a flickering candlelight promising refuge in a world fraught with shadows. As he entered, a crackle of conversation fell momentarily silent, eyes turning with nosy curiosity, embroiled in their own little conspiracies. The scent of wet wood mingled with stale beer and warm roasted nuts, an intoxicating potion of village life that collided with the chaos in his mind. Father Brown moved past the weathered bar, where the jovial barman wiped down the counter with a rag that could likely tell tales of its own. His attention was drawn toward the steady clamor of small groups gathered in intimate circles, sharing tales the way one might share secrets, with furtive glances and hushed voices. "Father Brown," a familiar voice carried through the murmurings, and with it, the lanky figure of Lyle Perkins, the local fisherman, waddled over. "You've come for the rain's gossip, haven't you?" He was a man bred from the waters, his skin as parchment, creased with lines of earnestness. "There's whispers, they say, like the wind in the willows. Men don't trust women around these parts, not since Calthorpe's death." "I was expecting a bit more than just idle chatter, Lyle," Father Brown replied, his mind spinning like the storm outside. "The storm must surely stir up more than just the weather tonight." "Ah!" Lyle's eyes twinkled with delight, knowing more than he let on. "Have you heard about Eleanor's frantic visit to the manor? Flapping like a hen about the estate, saying the will's gone, missing as a thief in the night. Best to hold your tongue, they say. Secrets have a way of slithering out when you least expect." Growing quiet, Father Brown took a seat, keenly observing the tavern's bustle. In one far corner, he noted two villagers, Corrigan and Adelia, leaning close together, whispering with urgency, their glances darting toward Eleanor's image, veiled in sorrow that hovered over them. He pondered, a small revelation dawning. What? Do you know of Adelia's relationship with the Calthorpes, Lyle? There were murmurs of close ties. Adelia? Lyle scoffed, scratching his beard. She had dreams of marrying Alfred, dreams swiftly dashed with his eye on the fortune rather than her faded charm. She believes Eleanor's kept her from the good graces of the family. It's a festering wound, I tell you. Father Brown leaned in, the heat of curiosity igniting his instincts. Ties like that can bind or choke, depending on which way the wind blows. And what of Corrigan? What's his stake in all this? Just a labourer, he claims, though the man's hand is rarely idle. Fixes old carts and carries a weight in words, Lyle replied, gesturing toward the duo. He's been near thick with Eleanor these days, more so than anyone dares admit. There's fear in his honesty, I'd reckon. The intricate social gears whirred in Father Brown's mind, teasing out threads of discord among the villagers eager to be rid of uncertainty, and yet they all seemed tangled together in a tapestry of mutual resentment. Beside him, Lyle leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You'd do best to keep your eye on Alfred, you know. Doesn't sit right with the sympathy folks had for him since his father's passing. Whispers thicken whenever he's about. His words slipped out like a warning, tethered under the rattle of rumbling thunder above. Father Brown took note of the tensions so easily ignited. Fuel feeding the fire of fear could manifest into desperate acts, where emotions turned volatile under the guise of denial. A tragic inheritance can birth desperation from the boldest of souls, especially a son blinded by grief. Suddenly, the tavern fell into an abyss of darkness. A power outage plunged them into shadow, stripped of even the airiness of laughter. Tension coiled in the dimness as patrons fumbled with candles, flickers of flame momentarily illuminating anxious faces. Conversations turned to murmurs of indignation, mixed with hints of panic, eyes darting around the room as reality crept in. Quite the storm, isn't it? Lyle quipped nervously, but his voice trembled under the faint candles as they revealed bits of humanity trapped in the murky expanses of trust turned suspect. In that instant, between the flaring lights, Father Brown sensed movement. The barmaid, her hands acutely aware in the dimness, nearly dropped a tray loaded with tankards. She recoiled as a shadow brushed by, unsettling her bearing, before she composed herself. Must be someone leaving in a hurry, she said, with an oddly hurried laugh that expired too quickly, hidden truths bending just beyond the candle glow. Father Brown's thoughts pirouetted, hearts racing toward a revelation that began stitching itself together. He caught the lurking glance of Corrigan as he leaned over Adelia, whispering rapid reassurances, while Eleanor's name slipped like a serpent through the cracks of the tavern. What do they whisper? In the absence of light, my friend? The chair screeched as Father Brown got to his feet, navigating the crowded room toward Corrigan. Tell me, does worry nip at your heels? He asked, eyes narrowing in the darkened tavern, echoes of secrets crawling at his heels. Yet the man seemed too absorbed in some heat of passion with Adelia to hear him. A soft crash from the corner startled everyone as one of the dim lights extinguished, plunging them into an even deeper darkness. A voice emerged like smoke, fraught with distress. Father Brown, we've got to get out. Something's not right. It was Maria, emerging from the shadowy recesses with fright in her wide eyes, marred with urgency. Father, I think someone's watching us. Before she could finish, the sound of splintering wood cut through the air, and the shadows crept forward, drawing the flickering light towards the door. A figure materialized from the dark, obscured but unmistakably bearing down on them, hungry with purpose and veiled in whispers like the wind through the willows. "Get behind me," Father Brown shouted, hearts surging with foreboding as the entrance swung open against the tempestuous night, letting chaos spill in like ink upon white pages. And in that masked fury, amid wet earth and swirling secrets, the truth stirred, to remain unseen, cloaked in shadows, waiting for the crucial breath when it could suffocate the light of clarity. The storm had merely begun, but the unraveling of hidden motives and whispered fears promised to ensnare those who lingered near its wicked embrace. Chapter 5. Clue of the Forgotten Letter. The door burst open with a crack, and a flash of lightning illuminated the parlor, revealing a figure poised on the threshold, a familiar silhouette draped in darkness, or was it something more sinister? Father Brown's heart raced as he recognized Eleanor, soaked and trembling, her face marred by rain and dread. "They're coming for you, Father," she cried, her voice aching with urgency. "You must hide, or flee." The wind howled like a pack of wolves, swirling through the open door and pulling at the hem of Father Brown's cassock as he stood rooted, bewildered, unable to discern the peril or the source behind her paranoia. Before he could respond, another clap of thunder erupted, echoing through the manor's hollow corridors, and a crashing sound followed. A chair flipped, then a desperate footfall gave chase, vanishing into the tumult outside. There was no time for questions. Instinctively, he surged forward, pushing past her into the stormy night. But he froze. One hand grasped a crumpled letter that lay half-hidden beneath the table near the entrance, the fabric of trepidation woven through every crease. The rain-soaked parchment slipped cold against his fingers, and he felt its weight, a sinister promise hidden within. "Eleanor," he called, glancing back to see the fearful shadows dance over her features. "There may be clues in here, but I need your eyes. We cannot let fear allow us to falter." He unfolded the letter, and the candlelight flickered uncertainly. "While we stand in the murk, do not let the darkness hold dominion." He whispered more to himself than to her as he deciphered the shaky script. Heart-pounding, he scanned the words that swam ahead. "I will meet you at the willow's edge. Under the moonlight, the truth of our affair shall be unveiled. A. Who is this A?" Eleanor's voice was breathless, tension cracking through it. Could it be Alfred? No, Father Brown mused. The signature bears an intimacy that suggests not kinship, but something more romantic. Connection often dances in the shadows of deceit, my dear child. He straightened, turning to her eyes, so wide and shining with trepidation, illuminating the fear, weaving its way between their souls. "Do you possess a locket, a keepsake that may belong to him?" Eleanor shook her head, yet one word slipped through. "Adelia." Father Brown's gaze sharpened, a ricochet of thoughts firing in his mind, unraveling the tension that knotted its way into Eleanor's truth. Adelia, if the note indeed refers to an affair, it poses more questions than answers. Could she have been keeping something from us? Something dark to protect her own standing? The wind gusted fiercely, rattling the windows, foreboding, as thunder rumbled in the distance. "We must find her," Father Brown compelled, dashing back toward the entrance. "There's no protection without the truth." Eleanor locked her eyes onto his, though they glimmered like slate beneath the moon. What if she has nothing to say? What if she knows nothing of the letter? Or worse, what if she does? Ignoring her doubts, he pulled open the door, stepping into the merciless storm. The rain lashed with savage eagerness, as if it sought to wash away both the past and the present. Yet he felt the weight of the letter nestled in his cloak, a treasure marked by treachery. They hastened toward the village, where the flickering lights of the hare and hound flickered like candles against the tempest. Father Brown's heart half sank with every step. As they entered, the inn buzzed with subdued panic, the storm's intensity driving anxious patrons into hushed whispers. The barmaid's hand trembled as she poured ale, her gaze darting toward Corrigan as he clutched Adelia's arm. Adelia's pale features flushed with something akin to guilt, and in that moment, Father Brown locked eyes with her knowingly. "Adelia," he called, striding forward, drawing the attention of all present. "It seems we have some pressing matters to discuss concerning certain letters." Her brow furrowed fiercely, lips parting to produce a protest, but Corrigan intervened, his words sharp and defensive. "You shouldn't be meddling in affairs that don't concern you, Father." "Is it not within reason," Father Brown countered smoothly, "to open the doors to the truth when the air grows heavy with accusation?" He held up the letter, the parchment now glistening with rain. "Perhaps it bears the secrets we desperately seek. Perhaps it speaks of the nights spent in shadows and whispers." Adelia flinched, the mask of composure beginning to fray. "I know nothing of any affair," she insisted, voice trembling now with indignation. But her denial clattered against the resolve in Father Brown's eyes, something brittle, cracking beneath a looming truth. "It is breezy, unpredictable. Trivialities slither through doubts and fears," Father Brown mused aloud, observing the duo, "but lies have a way of binding people loosely. Adelia, what if Alfred's passing lays heavily on your conscience? We can peel back the hurt together, if only you tell me what happened that night." In the gathering silence, tension was palpable, as the storm outside unwound fervently, a symphony of chaos nearly drowned out by the drum of anxious hearts. "What are you insinuating?" Adelia's retaliation came fierce, but behind her words lay a vulnerability, an exposed nerve, stark beneath the surface. Before Father could answer, a sharp cry pierced the air, sudden and startling in the atmosphere, thick with oppression. Patrons pivoted as one. The barmaid stumbled backward, gasping as she collapsed, her tray clattering like broken glass on the icy floor. A splotch of crimson blossomed against the wood, surreal amid the chatter of the panicked crowd. "Maria!" Eleanor shrieked, lunging forward, arms stretching toward the barmaid, their eyes locked, silently pleading. Father Brown felt frozen, a realization cut through him like ice. Turning the letter over, he saw a small corner blackened with unmistakable ink, trailing toward an unmistakable insignia. A dark bloom of ink smeared where the paper had been folded, dripping secrets and history. As gasps erupted and the storm raged, Father Brown was thrust into clarity, a chilling deduction sparking within. This affair, this tangled ground of emotion, fed the chaos that loomed above them, a web spun from shadows and guilt now coming undone. "Father, what is it?" Eleanor's question hung in the air, electrifying with the unseen blade of truth. He locked eyes with Adelia, her mask barely maintained amidst the frightful ambush around them. "Do not speak it, laborer or lady," he cautioned, sensing the crack of kaleidoscopic dread tightening the very fabric of the room. "The heart obscures reason, and yet, in the find of this tale, lies an inevitability that screams for resolution. Shocked silence smothered the tavern, urgency suspended in the air, waiting for one careful movement between truth and consequence. And as Father Brown gathered his thoughts, filled with uncertainty, the shadows drifted closer once more. What he had feared lurking within them stepped boldly into the light, an unspoken truth that threatened to sweep them all into its merciless grip. The hunt was on. Heightened, too, was the sense that not everyone might emerge unscathed tonight. Find the letter, uncover the deeper secrets, he thought, pushing past fear as he caught sight of something familiar, an emblem glimmering through the rain on a fervid flesh, just shy of the threshold. What awaited would lead them down a path darker than any storm that had ever passed. Chapter 6. Shadows at Midnight. A thunderous crash echoed in the inky darkness, reverberating through the night air like the cries of anguished spirits, and Father Brown stumbled over a root as he raced through the rain-slicked fields, desperate footsteps fusing with the pounding heart of a storm. Lightning raked across the sky, illuminating the sprawling silhouette of the Scarecrow standing sentinel at the edge of the tilled earth, draped in tattered clothes and resonating with an almost human sadness. Only a moment earlier he had been at the tavern, the unraveling chaos of secrets embedded in every corner, and now instinct compelled him toward this grotesque figure that could so easily be construed as a harbinger of despair. "Eleanor!" he bellowed into the tempest, though the wind swallowed his voice whole, pulling it into the dark abyss beyond. He recalled the pallor bleeding from Adelia's face, the glint of guilt trapped in Corrigan's eyes, as if the very air had woven an intricate web of fear about them, quickening the pace of his thoughts, where every thread tugged painfully at the heart of the mystery. The events of the evening clamored in his mind, like bells tolling for the dead, each moment a possible revelation, each shadow a concealed truth that swirled, ever elusive, around him. As he neared the Scarecrow, he could feel the energy of the night thrum in his veins like a living thing. He stopped beneath the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, rain dripping from its leaves like forgotten tears, and approached the eerie silhouette with cautious reverence. Perhaps, he mused, it was not merely a hapless decoration, an idle design meant to frighten birds from precious crops, rather an intricate piece of a more gruesome puzzle left by the storm-tossed hands of fate. Kneeling beside the Scarecrow, Father Brown strained to make sense of the humidity in the air pushed aside by each gust of wind, the chaotic rhythm of nature mirrored by the turmoil in his mind. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the coarse fabric that had once dressed this strangely forlorn sentinel. Something glimmered beneath the layers of tattered clothing, an anomaly hidden amongst the threads of fray and dust that whispered stories of the earth. With a firm tug, he unearthed a small silver locket, its surface glistening beneath the fleeting light of the storm. The chain was tangled in the fibers of the Scarecrow's garb, almost as though it had been placed there as a secret offering to the night. He held it up, the cold, familiar sensation against his palm igniting a flicker of recognition, not as a mere locket, but a symbol that had entwined with the complicated threads of his investigation. Abandoning the rain's embrace for a moment, he pried the clasp open, revealing a photograph nestled inside, two faces, beaming, youthful, yet tired with hope. "Ah," he whispered, sudden clarity slicing through the murkiness enveloping him like a cloak of despair. "Adelia's locket. A sense of urgency tugged at him, intermingling with the dread of impending revelations. The faces had been obscurely haunting calculations that now bore down upon him. Alfred and Adelia forever linked, their connection woven into the very fabric of the unsolved mystery. A shifting noise in the distance jolted him upright, the sound slicing through the constant rhythm of raindrops and muffled supplications from the shadows nearby. The world pulsing around him threatened to close in as anxiety coursed through his veins, compelling him to act against the mounting unknowns. "Father," it was Eleanor's voice, and he turned sharply, catching sight of her emerging shape, a drenched spectre amidst sheets of rain, her wide eyes glinting with fear. "We must leave. Something evil prowls the edge of those woods." Her voice, once a fragile thread of resilience, now quivered with primal terror. "Wait." His gaze remained fixed on her, drawn as if by an inescapable gravitational force. "What did you see?" "I felt it, not saw," she corrected, her breaths ragged, lost in the cadence of the storm. "It watches us, searches for something." For a heartbeat, a strange acknowledgement hung between them. He felt a chill creep up his spine, the sensation of being scrutinized, a predator lurking just beyond the flickering lantern light. What if it seeks more than merely eyes in the shadows? His words fell from his lips, an echo of an idea that reverberated within the ominous night. Then, amid the atmospheric intensity, he spotted something. A flash of movement behind the band of trees that bordered the field, where darkness devoured light and suppressed the wind's howl. Instinct kicked in as visions of the tavern rushed back, scattering the array of connections he had drawn among the characters that now taunted him. "Get back!" He could barely roar against the storm, yet the warning came too late. Before he could take a step closer, a figure darted out from the woods, fully cloaked in black, only the glint of something sharp, an embracement of silver catching the brunt of the lightning. "Father Brown!" The voice came harsh and desperate, almost a howl drowned by pouring rain. But the figure was gone before he could decipher the urgency. Eleanor took a step back, instinctively shackled by fear, while instinct guided father in pursuit. "Stay close," he ordered. Adrenaline coursed through him, yet the realization dawned as the shadow slipped away. He was not merely hunting the spectre of a man. They were entwined in something far darker, a blend of hidden truths and emerging dangers. The storm's breath seemed to hurl him forward, spiraling him further into the labyrinth of grief and whispers that had engulfed them. As he sprinted, Lockett clutched tightly. Each battered footfall sent waves of purpose surging through him. He collided with the echoes of unspoken layers, wrapping tightly around the fields like tendrils of ink, creating a fatal alliance between the approaching darkness and the truth now within fingers' reach. "This trail may lead us to the nexus of all," he murmured, the spark of fear igniting wisdom within. Then, abruptly, the rain intensified, pounding against him as if condemning him for seeking hidden truths. An unsettling thought wrapped his mind. Had he changed the outcome before him with his questions? And just then, a noise split through the chaos. A single gunshot crackled against the resonating thunder, a sharp, unrelenting echo that quaked through the very core of his being, enveloping them in silence that screamed louder than any tempest, freezing time in the face of a moment that demanded clarity. "Father!" Eleanor's cry collapsed with the night as the world swallowed its breath, intense shadows weaving dangerously around them where danger hovered closer than ever. The hunt, now punctuated by the gunshot, loomed not simply an investigation, but a visceral confrontation with a haunting truth they could never have foreseen. The embers of clarity and chaos flickered dangerously as Father Brown braced himself against the harrowing gust that warned of things yet to come, the stakes becoming clearer, yet far more perilous than he dared to imagine. Chapter 7. A Confession in Bloom. Father, I did it. I killed him. The desperate wail pierced through the shroud of dawn like a gunshot, echoing against the stillness of the early morning. Father Brown jolted awake, the remnants of a restless night wrapping around him like a damp cloak, his senses sharpened by the unearthly light that filtered through the rain-soaked windows. His heart quickened at the urgency in the voice, spilling out the confession from a mouth that trembled with fear. The garden before him, choked with dampened blooms, held its breath, each petal in the flower bed glistening like tears spilled upon the earth. Eleanor stood in the garden, her figure swathed in the pale light of dawn, offsetting the shadows that gathered in the corners. She had arrived like a wraith, wading through the nightmarish remnants of the storm, her hair clinging damply to her brow, while visibility blurred around her like memories fading in the dawn's glow. The violets around her seemed to quake in accordance with her frenetic energy, trembling as if the ground sought to swallow the weight of her words. I saw him die, Father. Alfred, I saw it happen. We mustn't speak of this too loudly, Eleanor, Father Brown said, his voice firm, yet marred with a gravity that urged caution. Tell me all you know. His gaze, which inherited the colors of the storm, darted about their surroundings, instinct roaring within him as if an unseen predator prowled just beyond the hedge. The garden's serenity, so deceptively beautiful against the backdrop of chaos, felt instead like a psychological riddle wrapped in the fragrant twists of fate. In between gasps for breath, Eleanor described her serene yet terrifying vigil by the stone well at the edge of the property, a crossroads that had served as both gathering and sepulchre for their tightly knit group. She whispered of shadowy figures, of words exchanged swift and sharp, cousins of the storm that had conveyed threats veiled under the cloak of harmless charm. Had Corrigan not been privy to the tragedy, surely he too would not have received the vital yet suffocating notice, the clarity turning cloudy as dark clouds on the horizon signified something more than mere weather. Yes, the well, Father Brown added, his eyes narrowing with insight, a passage not only through water, but through currents of intent, to confess in a respected open space, the almighty silence of nature hides well a deceitful heart. He gestured for her to remain quiet as they moved closer, the glimmers of dawn peeking through the twisted branches, wrapping their limbs around one another in a conspiratorial embrace. Alfred, he meant well, she murmured, her voice a fragile tremor as she stooped to gather a handful of pebbles from the earth. But they said, he knew too much. I feared for my life. The weight of her admission seemed to fill the air around them, the atmosphere thickening as the shards of memory coalesced into something a great deal more sinister. Father Brown studied her intently, seemingly outwardly calm, but observing the edges of her visage for any signs of insincerity. You wander toward emptiness, my dear, he cautioned, his breath a shivering whisper. Guilt dances as easily as truth, especially when violence folds over itself. Let's ponder if your fear truly festers from your heart, or if blame preconditions itself as an armor against the world. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Eleanor's face, her brow furrowing at the priest's insight. "You think me capable of such malice?" Her indignation sparked like flint to fire, illuminating a depth that twisted as deeply as her vulnerability rang true. Here lay a girl caught in the intricate web of love and betrayal. A young woman now burdened by a secret she didn't know how to uncoil from her soul. "No, I think you more fragile than that." Father Brown regarded her, capturing more of the garden's scent, damp earth mingling with dewy blooms, while the depths of her eyes clouded with emotion. "You seek absolution for a sin that may not be yours to bear, yet find your tremors entangled in the deceptions of the world around you." Suddenly, as if conjured by their weighty exchange, a noise emerged from the edge of the garden, a melancholy murmur carried forth by the shifting wind. Father Brown turned to find Adelia there, standing ghostly pale against her blood-soaked dress, a fabric that now appeared mottled and stained in the fading light. "I heard. I came as soon as I could," she rasped, desperation lingering in her breath as her eyes darted between Father Brown and Eleanor. "Your presence grows heavy amid these accusations. Do you too bear the weight of a confession?" Father Brown inquired, his voice steadying. Yet an unsettling edge gripped the tension coiling around them. The surreal haze twisted fiercely, raising questions sharper than the chill in the morning air. Adelia trembled slightly, shaking her head, but terror coursed through her features and begot a strange harmony with Eleanor's broken repose. "I was at the tavern, but something drew me back to the garden. I thought the truth might flicker through the morning mist." Her fingers drummed against the terracotta, and that sense of urgency altered, becoming a wellspring of accusations unwritten in the evening's aftermath. Father Brown's intuition bristled, furrowing his brow while concentrating on the threads lying before him. The fabric of their confessions did not braid as simply as raw emotions. Rather, they intertwined with gossamer lies, skimming the edges of guilt. There it was, the edge of clarity cloaked in a tangle of inquiry. "Then something lies at the heart of your fear and shame, akin to a flower unwilling to bloom amid the ash," the priest murmured, sustaining focused attention on both women. "Tell me, who is it you are afraid of?" Neither spoke. The pause hung like the moment before thunder cracks across a clear night sky, and uncertainty morphed into an unsaid tension pressing upon them. "Father, something lies hidden here," Eleanor finally suggested, "in the well or among the blooms. There lies danger mixed with breath, and the truth in bloom is hardly mere like petals drawn to sunlight," Father Brown stated, the revelation striking him all at once. Suddenly the garden no longer felt like hallowed ground, but a thick cauldron of secrets threatening to boil over. In that significant heartbeat, a shadow shifted. Behind them, cloaked in ominous silence, as if the air itself stilled, holding its breath, the moment suddenly fanged with jeopardy. The sound of a gun's low click followed, sharp as it broke the magic tethering the three figures together. Father Brown's heart thudded. Realization swept away the last vestiges of safety. "Run!" he bellowed, but as he turned, the figure stepped forward. It was only the flash of a silver locket, the very one he had found in the fields, held tightly in a gloved hand, its sheen betraying a hidden agenda. "You will regret not listening to me," the figure sneered, voice low and gravelly, as the sunlight revealed the traitorous glint of a gun barrel. Paralyzed in shock, the moment splintered, and the garden before him morphed into a crocus of uncertainty and hostility. Father Brown tightened his grip on the weight of truth, locking eyes with Eleanor and Adelia, thrusting the two women behind him. The bloom of confession was less a flower of hope than the grim petals of a deadly trap. As the atmosphere shifted, he knew their lives hung in precarious balance, their fate entrapped in the confusion of guilt and innocence. As the dawn bled toward an inevitable confrontation that would unveil more than he had ever expected. Chapter 8. The Secrets We Keep. The echo of the gunshot still throbbed in the silence, a visceral heartbeat resounding in the cold air, as Father Brown's pulse raced quicker than the looming shadow that crept closer through the garden gloom. "Get behind me," he shouted, his voice firm, yet laced with urgency. The figure stepped forward, revealing a gaunt face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, eyes glinting with malevolence. "You think you can shield them, priest? You've awakened a storm far beyond your understanding." The scent of damp earth hung thick, pervading the atmosphere with a keen sense of urgency as Eleanor and Adelia pressed against Father Brown's back, their breath hitching in their throats, mingling with the petrichor that erupted from the soaked soil. Twisted branches framed the scene like a harrowing portrait. The garden, once a cradle of innocence, now lay shackled in menace. "Who are you?" Father Brown managed, his voice steady despite the turmoil roiling within. "What do you want?" He could hear the faint rustle of leaves echo the weight of hidden truths, the very fabric of their lives woven with the lies that now threatened to unravel. "Your meddling has drawn the curtain back too soon," the figure hissed, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting an audience from the shadows. "You seek truth, Father, but truths are as fickle as the clouds that conceal the sun. They can blind you, lead you astray." The gun barrel gleamed malevolently in the fractured light. It was not just a weapon, but a barrier between worlds, threatening to sever their grasp on reality in the blink of an eye. Father Brown's mind raced, shifting through layers of deception like searching for a quill in the bramble. "Your threats hold no power without clarity behind them," he stated firmly, his gaze piercing through the tempest of the man's visage. "Speak plainly, and perhaps absolution shall find you as well as these women you've threatened." An uneasy hiss escaped the figure's lips, an involuntary tremor betraying the bravado he sought to project. "Absolution? Is it for me or them that you seek such a fate? Secrets weave a tangled web, and those entrapped within cannot hope for salvation." All at once, an unexpected sound rippled through the air like the fluttering wings of trapped birds. Adelia's choked gasp echoed as her hand flew to her throat. "The cellar! It's in the cellar!" she blurted, and for a split second, Father Brown caught a flash of wild clarity within her eyes. The storm around them roiled in anticipation. He could feel a dawning realization, piercing the weighty shadows enveloping their existence. The threat of the unknown swirled around them like smoke, heavy and suffocating, with each word hanging on to the fragile tension. "The cellar," he prodded, an ember of curiosity lighting in his soul as he grasped onto the thread of her revelation. "What lies beneath these floors, Adelia? What echoes in the depths of this house, secrets you've kept hidden among the fragrant blooms?" "The letters! The blood-stained letters!" she cried, her voice now a threadbare whisper, frail against the sudden fervor that imbued the atmosphere. The shadow of fear flickered across Adelia's features as she continued. "I found them tucked away, in a room long forgotten. They tell of a family tragedy, fate intertwined with betrayal." Only suspicion festered within the figure as he narrowed his eyes, caught momentarily off guard by the sudden influx of desperate emotions. "You know nothing," he snarled, but his grip on the gun wavered, as if torn between the bizarre duality of truth and deception. "Do I?" Father Brown challenged quietly, scrutinizing the interplay of fear that danced between them. "Or is it you who fears the unearthing of past sins buried deep? The letters, Adelia, show me." With a steady hand, he gestured toward her. The struggle within Adelia's heart played across her face as she fumbled, doubt creeping in alongside clarity. "I did not mean for it to come out this way, but unabashed truth rarely comes without consequence." Father Brown, unwavering, pressed, "Your fear is not the key. Admitting your part in this tangled path is the only way." His words anchored like marble in the tempest, firm and unyielding against the swirling winds of treachery. Suddenly, the figure snapped, shattering the delicate moment like glass beneath a boot. "Stop them," he bellowed, desperation clawing at the edges of his authority, the gun wavering. "You'll regret this. You've no idea what you awaken." With a swift movement, Father Brown lunged, but was met with a gasp, almost from the earth beneath them, and the sudden crash of a door thundering against the frame echoed through the garden, echoing the cacophony of a storm's heart. Lightning illuminated a figure emerging from the shadows. Corrigan, the cousin twisted within this family secret, stood agape as the confusion crystallized into tumult. "Get away from them," Corrigan bellowed, eyes flaring with anger and protectiveness. In that moment of distraction, the tension within the air thickened, an unforeseen moment suspended in time before the world turned deadly. The masked figure turned, sneering. "You think that you can intervene, Corrigan? Secrets are not so easily unraveled." But before he could finish, a crack splintered the air. A blinding white flash of silver leapt from the trunk of a nearby tree, a sound so full of brutality that it was hard to discern if it was thunder or a gunshot. Father Brown felt the pulse of time stumble in that instant, eyes widening as the figure staggered back, blood blooming like the most wretched of flowers against the backdrop of dawn's pale light. The world hung suspended in breathless confusion, uncertainty forging an infernal tempest between them as the figure's eyes widened in betrayal, realization dawning the darkness of his own secrets. As he crumpled, shrouded in the rustling leaves of fate's cruel design, Father Brown could feel the threads of truth unraveling, each revelation leading closer to a core long hidden. "Father!" Adelia's cry shattered the silence, raw and palpable, as chaos orchestrated its dance around the three of them, turning everything into a race against buried shadows awaiting the light. The depth of the unearthly struggle loomed large, challenging the very essence of humanity, entwined in deception. Father Brown's hand trembled, not from fear, but from the heavy realization that, within that single moment, resided far more than he had dared to unearth. The storm had only begun, and their darkest secrets were yet to come. Chapter 9. The Trap of the Soul. The heavy thud of footsteps reverberated through the chapel, echoing louder than the tolling of the bells that ushered in the twilight hour. Father Brown's heart pounded in rhythm with the muffled footsteps, each thump resonating in his chest like a warning drum, heralding a tempest. Shadows danced along the stained glass windows, their colors smeared by the ink of the approaching storm, and the air bore the sharp, metallic scent of tension, a ghostly reminder of the gunshot that had pierced the previous night's shroud of darkness. As the priest adjusted his spectacles, he caught sight of a figure slipping into the dimly lit alcove, eyes filled with a mix of desperation and deceit, the firelight amplifying the shadows beneath them. "Father," hissed Eleanor, her voice laced with trepidation as she stepped into the flickering glow of the candles. "They're coming for us." She brushed a trembling hand over her brow, browning the lace of her sleeve with perspiration. "You must make haste." Father Brown raised a hand, silencing her with a subtle intensity that belied the storm brewing within those hallowed walls. He had summoned the suspects here under the cloak of night, determined to weave a snare that would unearth the tangled roots of betrayal, but the growing unease clawed at his resolve. "Fear not," he soothed, "for confession is the key that unlocks those tangled locks." With a steady breath, he extinguished the last candle, plunging the room into darkness. It was not yet the midnight hour. A far more profound darkness lingered, one created by the very souls who harbored secrets under the veneer of civility. He could hear their whispers, the almost imperceptible murmurs threading through the shadows, like ghosts seeking release. Each suspect stood across from him, enveloped in the gloom, revealing nothing more than their outlines. A gathering of the embittered and the lost, poised at the edge of revelation. Tonight, dear souls, we seek not just to unmask shadows, but to confront what hides in the very corners of our hearts, Father Brown intoned, his voice steady and unwavering. A salute to the unknown, he welcomed the anxiety that flitted about the room like a captured bird. If he was to trap the essence of their fear, he must illuminate the dark corners of their confessions. He took a single step forward, his gaze sharp, searching the flickering outlines of faces lined with fear and uncertainty. "Let us speak of trust," he began, his breath steady, "and of loyalty bound with dark chains. What shall you wager to protect your secrets?" The tension thickened palpably, like the humidity before a storm, suffocating and enlivening all at once. Adelia shifted in her spot, her fingers twisting nervously over the remnants of the blood-stained letters she had barely begun to reveal. She cast an anxious glance at Eleanor, then back at Father Brown, as if a choice teetered on the edge of her tongue. "We have lost. Enough, Father," she murmured. "Is it worth risking more?" "Ah, but it is often in the act of laying one's vulnerabilities bare that true strength burgeons," he replied, leaning closer, the shadows masking the intent in his eyes. "Tell me, dear Adelia, what terror haunts your nights? What haunting truths lie shrouded beneath the fragrance of your childhood garden?" "Nothing that concerns you," her voice shot back, stung by the priest's probing, and yet Father Brown could see the gradual unraveling of her composure, small fissures opening in her steadfast facade, exposing her to the lurking truths she longed to keep at bay. As the candlelight returned fleetingly, illuminating their sordid gathering, they shifted uneasily among one another. Father Brown caught the slightest hint of a smile tugging at the corner of Corrigan's lips, a stony demeanor masking a more serpentine intent. "Manipulating these ladies' fears will only bind you tighter, priest," he remarked casually, a low, velvety growl of amusement hidden beneath layers of condescension. "What tales we weave to mask our frailties, eh?" Father Brown's eyes narrowed, the glimmer of challenge igniting in their depths. "What lies beneath your surface, Corrigan? A charmer's wit cannot cloak desolation forever." With those words, Father Brown unnerved him, plunging the room back into a spell of thickening silence that prickled the air. Outside, the thunder cracked, lighting the dim interior with momentary flashes, illuminating Eleanor's clenched fists and the damp sheen painting Adelia's pallor as her thoughts danced perilously close to the unseen precipice. Father Brown took a deep breath. This was more profound than a mere confrontation of guilt. He sensed the darker strokes of treachery as they mingled, a sinful chiaroscuro. "Let us recount our evening," he continued, bringing them back into the pulse of that night-long quagmire. "You all arrived at the estate, with motives both hidden and illuminated. Was it not a night when truths met shadows on the path to malign intent?" Adelia flinched, and in that moment he seized an opening, understanding that often it was not the blinding light of truth that revealed all, but its whispers echoing around the periphery. "The letters, my dear. What of the letters tucked behind the jagged seams of memory?" "What letters?" Corrigan interjected sharply, his composure trembling at the edges. Father Brown's sharp observation noted the way he leaned forward, the tension coiling like a snake poised to strike. "Those frayed parchment pieces that contain histories beyond your grasp," Father Brown pressed, his voice cloaked in a calmness that mocked the turmoil simmering within. "If they are indeed buried treasures, could they not also serve as bait to uncover the treason riddled among us?" Eleanor gasped, the tension stretching taut as a tightrope. "You wouldn't risk revealing them, would you?" "Only in the act of revealing may we bring forth salvation from beneath the mire," Father Brown replied, assessing their reactions like a weaver listening to the songs of threads. Each tremor and halt unveiled a spark of motivation, a human frailty that birthed both dread and meaning. And yet, as he spoke, the world outside grew suddenly still, as if the storm had paused to witness. Just then, the candles flickered ominously before extinguishing, plunging them into a suffocating darkness that dismantled their last illusions. In the whispering shadows, Father Brown felt the sharp edge of danger brush against his neck, and the acrid smell of smoke began to settle into his lungs. "Watch closely," came a whisper, low and secretive, slicing through the dark air. It sent shivers skimming up Father Brown's spine, stealing his breath. "For one of you shall not escape the trap the soul hath inside." In a split second, a scream, a blood-curdling confession that emerged from the velvet shadows, filled the chapel, reverberating against the stone walls, wrapping tightly around the edges of their very lives, and then, abruptly, it fell silent. A heavy breath hanged in the air before the ground beneath them roared with a crashing echo as the bell tolled ominously. Father Brown's heart stilled as he summoned the last grips of will. The darkness threatened to swallow him, but within it, the very essence of the truth flickered like dying embers. Beneath their faces, he sensed the stench of betrayal, preparing to spring forth, weaving its noxious grasp around them all. The trap of the soul had been set. Chapter 10. The Feast of Revelations. The scream clawed its way back from the abyss of silence, reverberating against the walls like shattered glass, a gaunt spectre of truth murmuring from the depths of the now allied darkness. Father Brown's heart thundered like the storm outside, a wild cacophony that threatened to drown out comprehension. In the dimness of the chapel, where candlelight had once danced merrily, shadows loomed menacingly, as if the very architecture bore witness to a grotesque ballet of betrayal and fear. Unnerved, the gathered souls shifted in their seats, the short breaths of panic breaking the suffocating stillness. Father Brown, cloaked in resolve, sensed their collective dread preparing to spill. He stepped into the glow of the single surviving candle, its feeble flame flickering defiantly against the darkness, while the air thickened with the acrid scent of smoke. It clung to his throat like a guilty chain. "Eleanor," he beckoned, with an intensity that pulled her from the retreat of her despair. What does your heart whisper in the wake of such earnest cries? Her eyes darted nervously, as if they wished to hide beneath the lace of her sleeve. What truths lie behind that facade you so desperately cling to? Trembling, she raised a quivering hand to stifle her voice in a half-hearted facade of composure. I speak only my thoughts, she stammered, but Father Brown noted the underlying quaver that crested like a wave before crashing, a tempest of suppressed emotion ready to explode. At the table, Adelia's fingers tightened around the blood-stained letters, their weight heavier than the silence that stretched between them. "This isn't what I wanted, Father," she cried suddenly, her voice raw. "You are playing with fire. If we delve deeper, what if we ignite something that cannot be quenched?" "Ah, but dear Adelia," he countered gently, "is it not often from ashes that we find the most precious of truths? Secrets fester, like unhealed wounds, a truth we must confront." Corrigan, watching from the shadows, leaned slightly forward, his eyes narrowing, as he brandished a dark humor that seemed too foreign to this gathering of mournful souls. "And what if those truths unveil darker secrets still, Father? Or are we merely puppets dancing to your grand marionette show?" His voice dripped with derision, treachery flickering behind the bravado like a serpent coiling to strike. "Perhaps so," Father Brown replied, his gaze piercing through Corrigan's bravado to catch the flicker of uncertainty lurking beneath. "But it is the puppeteer who knows how the strings entwine their marionettes. Your actions weave a tapestry, Corrigan, stitching yourself further into both your secrets and your accusations." A shiver swept through the room, stirring the flickering candle's flame, as if it too understood the reckoning soon to unfold. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, resonating with the unsettled tension that had settled amongst them. "Let us not forget the reason we are here," Father Brown continued, his steely voice cutting through their rising trepidation. "We gather tonight to feast, yes, but also to invoke salvation from within the banality of our existence." He nodded toward the table, freshly laid, silver glinting with intent. "Will you not part the veils that cloak your truths like a shroud, dear friends?" As they absorbed his challenge, Father Brown caught a fleeting glance shared between Eleanor and Adelia. In that moment, something shifted, a bond forged in desperation, a fragile alliance that ignited beneath the tempest that heralded their feast. And then, as if compelled by the invisible pull of fate, Eleanor abruptly broke the tension, the words spilling forth like bitter wine. "I cannot endure this masquerade any longer, if I am to face that which haunts me. Better the devil you know than the one you do not, my dear," Adelia interrupted, her voice scarcely more than a whisper, yet tinged with a defiance woven with the bravery of freshly honed scars. Dry laughter escaped Corrigan's lips, mirthless and chilling. "This is absurd. Speak plainly. There's little point in theatrics while secrets writhe in the corners. Or are you all too proud to indulge in the depths of your cowardice?" His caustic dismissal hung heavy in the air, pressing at the limits of something dangerously dormant. As the storm swirled beyond the chapel's walls in imitation of the tempest within, Father Brown surveyed each anguished visage in turn, his heart scanning the emotional battlefields bared before him. Adelia's hands flew to her mouth, containing a shudder of dread, while Eleanor's eyes glistened with the shine of oncoming tears. But it was Corrigan whose composure shook, the bravado appearing like a thin film of ice beneath which lay swirling currents of guilt and fear. "Do not mistake my reticence for guilt, priest," Corrigan hissed, the calm facade crumbling momentarily, his facade stripped away like bark from a tree under pressure. "It is you that leads us into an abyss of uncertainty. Perhaps your misguided belief in redemption will only lead us to damnation." With resolve, Father Brown leaned closer, the shadows that swirled around him whispering their intentions. "Or perhaps, dear Corrigan, it is you that fears redemption, a liberation of your soul from the shackles of your own twisted conscience." Just then, the door slammed shut, rattling the very foundation of the chapel and plunging them into eerie silence. The candles flickered again, battling against the encroaching darkness, revealing the deepening lines etched into their faces, a reflection of their internal calamities. "Enough," Adelia erupted, her voice echoing against the stone walls, drowning out the thunder that answered her call. "Reveal your intentions, or I will expose them here. The letters I kept were not meant to be torn asunder, but they hold the key. But I will not yield to idiocy any longer." A sudden crash echoed outside, the metallic clang reverberating, an omen perhaps, or a herald of chaos yet to come. Father Brown leaned back, absorbing the weight of her words, for within them simmered the key to a greater puzzle, a truth grazed but not yet fully apprehended. "It seems our feast is destined for venturing where gluttony meets revelation," he spoke softly, his expression penetrating the fabric of trepidation, swirling like smoke amidst the struggles of trust laid bare. Clarity settled in his mind just as the candles flickered, shadows lancing deeper across their expressions, a swirl of fear and uncertainty waltzing a macabre rhythm in tune to the thunder's insistence. Then came a loud crash from the back of the chapel. The rafters trembled, and just as the remnants of truth lingered between them, the wall beside them buckled, as if the very structure of their desires trembled at the weight of their sins. The thunder rolled ominously, mingling with a distant siren, and with the booming sound, Father Brown's brow furrowed, summoning a new urgency that left no room for pretense. "Whatever may transpire," he declared, rising but just slightly, "let the true feasts of revelations rest upon our hearts alone, not the horrors that men conjure against one another. But for now, something deadly beckons from your past, Corrigan, and we must face it." No sooner had the words escaped his lips when the door gaped open, revealing the silhouette of a figure framed by storm's fury. And among the shadows stirred a chilling signature adorned with mystic menace, a figure none would expect, come to unveil the most damning of connections. As the reality of that moment dawned, a collective gasp echoed off the stone, and amid the approaching tempest, the veil of shadows was pulled forcibly aside. In that electric heartbeat, an undeniable truth loomed, ready to unravel destinies. Father Brown's grip tightened on the table's edge, a sudden gasp caught in them all, as time pirouetted, and the fateful revelation prepared to spring forth from its encasement. Chapter 11, The Final Yarn. The crash reverberated through the chapel like the sound of bones breaking, a thunderous announcement that both terrified and thrilled. Just as the dust swirled in the dim candlelight, flickering shadows leapt against the ancient stone walls, casting grotesque figures that danced around the gathered souls, whispering secrets of treachery long buried. Father Brown stood rigid, his heart pounding in rhythm with the storm that raged outside as the figure silhouetted against the doorway was finally revealed. A woman drenched in rain, her features obscured by the curtain of her disheveled hair. The terrified, collective breath of the room turned to a gasp as she stepped forward, her voice trembling, echoing with urgency. "I must speak." "Ruth," Adelia's voice cut through the tension, laced with disbelief and dread. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." The stranger's eyes flared like distant lanterns, alight with desperation. "More than one of us has a past. We cannot escape. Secrets have a way of unraveling like thread from a child's first garment. They are stitched messily, fraught with danger." "Enough with the riddles," Corrigan snapped, the mask of bravado fraying around the edges as he moved closer, cautiously. "What do you know of this? What brings you here tonight?" But Ruth paid him no heed, her attention solely on Father Brown, whose steady gaze held both compassion and resolve. "Father, I overheard something important," she managed, trembling from the torment of her own unresolved affairs. "You must listen, for the threads of our lives have woven something sinister, something that could lay bare the truth of this night." The room pressed in on them, the walls heavy with anticipation as she paused, summoning the courage to weave her tale. Thunder rumbled, punctuating the air with the resonance of impending revelations, the rain hammering against the roof like 1,000 mallets, striking guilt into the hearts of the sinful. As the candle flames flickered, Father Brown stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with the promise of understanding. "Go on, dear soul. Speak, and unravel the secrets you carry." With a tremor of fear, Ruth recounted a fragment of forgotten rumors, quips traded like currency in dark corners about the Scarecrow, that accursed figure, draped in tales of haunting and betrayal. It was said he could recognize the wickedness in one's heart, that he was more than mere straw and cloth, a mere doll to hang in a field. This was the front for something grotesque and real. By sundown tomorrow, the truth of it will claim another victim. Or perhaps it is merely a child's tale spun from fear, Corrigan interjected, his faux bravado barely concealing a quake of uncertainty. "You think to distract us with folklore, perhaps to weave your own fabric of deception. How convenient." "Yet does it matter?" Adelia chimed in, her voice suddenly hardening as she glanced at Corrigan before fixing her stare on the woman. "What truth do you bring, Ruth? What veil will you lift?" The weight of expectation pressed upon them, and Father Brown felt the air thick with ill-concealed animosity. "Whatever twisted threads bind us, let us not cower from the reckoning. We are here to face down the specter of our own making." From the darkness, the silence enveloped her again, punctuated only by the crackle of the candle and the low rumble of thunder outside. Ruth balled her fists, struggling against the tide of uncertainty that threatened to disable her resolve. "I know where the blood-stained letters lead. They are but a prelude to something far greater, far darker than we imagined." "Speak it," Adelia commanded, her hands gripping the edge of the table, knuckles white against its surface. "Do not let this madness fester. Abandon all hesitation, for we cannot afford the luxury of doubt." Father Brown pressed, his steady voice cutting through the fog. And so, like harsh sunlight breaking through a storm, her tale spilled forth, painting a picture where the Scarecrow had not merely been a catalyst for fear, but an embodiment of vengeance, a cursed emblem of guilt that sought its due. Years ago, before the town forgot, there was a betrayal, a crime that ripped the fabric of our small community as surely as a knife disturbs the piece of flesh. The threads of that night, bound to the man, now laid at the altar of our fury. the very man believed to have committed an unthinkable sin. The letters contain a confession, not just of murder, but of the truth so ugly that even the moon could not witness it unscathed. A stillness filled the air, thick with the weight of words left unsaid, the ominous grumbling of thunder aligning with the eruptions of conscience. Each character, it seemed, bore a cross of guilt, their hearts knitting a shroud of doubt and fear. Father Brown's gaze shifted from face to face, seeking the unseen tangle woven between them like an intricate, deadly spider's web. "What if the one who holds the knife," he murmured, his piercing insight inciting a ripple of tension, "is not who we envision? Could it be that the whispers that carried boyish laughter in the past now echo with the weight of evidence turned to regret? But if we unravel this tale, Father, what of the Scarecrow? What of the death it portends?" Eleanor's voice quavered from the shadow. "A scarecrow bears the mark of his maker," he replied sagely, "and perhaps one amongst us is as guilty as the twisted fabric of their creation." Just then, a dreadful creak echoed through the chapel as a bolt of lightning illuminated the interior, momentarily sparking everything into stark relief. In its brief, blinding flash, Father Brown spied something, a glint of metal. No, a dagger held in the hands of one of his companions, cloaked in shadows and misunderstanding, poised for the unthinkable. "Then I shall not let the storm pass without revealing what lurks beneath." And at that very moment, the candle sputtered violently before extinguishing altogether, plunging them into a disorienting void, leaving Father Brown only one path ahead. In the oppressive silence that followed, a single whisper slipped through the darkness like a knife's edge. "It is time to make our truths known." As if heralded by the storm outside, a sudden gunshot erupted, a hypnotic sound that shattered the air before the identity shrouded in shadow could escape into infinity. The echoes of dread rang, louder than all unspoken confessions, a gasp following in unison with the clatter of falling bodies. In that agonizing moment, where time stood suspended, the truth, spun from a mere yard of fabric, seemed set to claim its price, an undying echo through the horror of darkness, yet to unveil itself under the storm's chilling shroud. Chapter 12. The Last Glove. A scream punctuated the air, shredding the suffocating darkness that cloaked the chapel. As the gunshot's reverberation faded into a silence thick with dread, candlelight flickered erratically, casting trembling shadows like the retreating souls of the living. It felt as though the very walls held their breath against the storm that raged beyond. Father Brown stood frozen, every muscle taut, the scent of gunpowder mingling with the damp, musty air of the ancient stone, an olfactory reminder that lives hung in the balance like a fragile mind on the precipice of revelation. Lightning illuminated the scene in stark contrasts, and in that moment of fragile clarity, he caught sight of Corrigan sprawled on the ground, clutching his abdomen, eyes wide in shock, a dark crimson staining the fabric of his shirt. Alarms clamored in Father Brown's mind, punctuated by the thunder that rolled ominously overhead, sounding like judgment from the heavens. The twisted imperative of the night surged forth, a desperate puzzle demanding resolution, its pieces bathed in blood beneath the tattered cloth of their lives. "Father, what must we do?" Adelia's voice quivered, desperation seeping into her tone like the rain that pelted the stained glass windows, each droplet a mournful elegy for a shattered peace. She stepped closer, eyes darting between the fallen man and the shadowy corners of the chapel, where secrets had festered too long in the dark. He cannot die here, not like this. Keep your distance. It could be the work of anyone among us. Ruth's urgent whisper trembled, her wet hair plastered against her pale face as she backed away against the wall, fear painting a ghostly visage. It was a wild accusation, yet within the throes of chaos, it carried a targeting sting. Father Brown determinedly stepped towards Corrigan, inches of darkened wood and secrets separating them, a clearing amidst the storm of betrayal. "Father, you ought to save him," Eleanor cried from the shadows near the altar, her tone raw with terror that gnawed at the edges of sanity. "You have to. He's not the murderer." It struck Father Brown then, the very ferocity of Eleanor's plea. What if Corrigan's innocence echoed a longer chain of deception crafted by someone who masqueraded in the semblance of friends? "Fear has a way of debuting our deepest truths," he murmured, sifting through the fog. "Eleanor, you speak of innocence. You once stood beside Corrigan as lovers, but love hides its scars behind a smile as easily as a knife behind a coat. You hold fear. Precisely why one would not want to commit murder is often buried under a heavy mass of guilt. Speak now, for this storm cares not for the dawdlers of reason." A silence stretched taut between them, piercing and heavy. Ruth slowly drew forward, fingers trembling delicately as they grazed the edge of the table, the blood-stained letters now a mere echo in her mind. "Even bloodlines can be traced back, Father," she said, her voice thin as the wind howling through the chapel. "The letters hold truths that can slice deeper than flesh if exposed, and it is not only love that can breed treachery, but the pursuit of revenge." "What are you saying?" Adelia prodded, arching her brow, a cocktail of confusion and dread brewing in her heart. Lightning flashed again, revealing a deep line carved into Ruth's brow, illuminating her like a spectre. "I speak of our bondage, our shared abandon. There are connections that bind us into blood castes. Betrayals seep from loving hearts, oftentimes blurring the lines between right and wrong." "Shall you confess?" Father Brown intercepted, his voice low and steady as if coaxing a flower from the soil. "There's a weight to your conscience that clings like fog at dawn." A sudden movement caught Brown's periphery, a glint of silver scattered on the floorboards, lost but not forgotten. Corrigan's dagger, the one he often kept sheathed at his hip, now lay exposed as if daring him to delve deeper. "Then, it isn't a mere game of shadows we are entangled in. Look, how fiercely the truth courses through our veins, even when smothered in silence." "You think you understand?" Corrigan croaked, the pain manifesting a deep shade of desperation to his tone, rendering him both childlike and monstrous. "But none of you ever truly knew what the Scarecrow meant to us." "Then enlighten us," Ruth pleaded, clasping her hands together defensively. "If there's a revelation hidden beneath your bravado, we tread on borrowed time." "Riddles, such clever riddles you call truth," Corrigan spat, fresh agony etched into his brow. "Do not summon the ghosts of the past until you faced your sins woven into the tapestry of this town." "Enough," Father Brown's voice rang resolutely, quelling the tide of voices that threatened to drown them. "We seek a knife, the dagger that cuts through guilt, and to the heart of the matter must be rushed through dusk. We linger on the brink of discovery." In that heartbeat of silence, another round of thunder clapped ferociously as if heralding the collision of souls. But then, just as he felt the dam of revelation begin to crack, moments slipped through his fingers like fine sand. "If we are to untangle these threads, Let it be known, who truly wields the knife may not be who next to betray us with their silence. Shifting shadows deepened around, and within them, danger mutated. A more potent bond bore witness to a crime looming like an unseen tempest. It was then the chapel bell tolled, a peal so grisly it felt like the heralding of truths warm and deceitful. Just as the weight of his insights pointed towards the turbulent undercurrents interwoven in their midst, a muffled scream arrested them. The accusatory allegation, wrapped in fabric kissed by moonlight, drawing the gaze of the light around them with an errant flick of fate. "Father Brown, behind you!" shrieked Adelia in a voice that pierced through the layers of darkness that had begun to suffocate them all. But it was too late. The figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, and before Father Brown could react, another gunshot rang out, blasting into the night as if time itself had broken under the weight of their secrets, plunging them into the abyss with nothing more than the echo of that fateful scream, lifting higher and higher into the storm, leaving nothing but anticipation thrumming in the charged air.